Hello, 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 my friends, my subscribers. I've missed you a lot, I honestly did. But as most of you may know by now, I have had some electronic malfunction on this end. And unfortunately, as you also most of you will know, I live in a rural area. So it's not as easy as just going to the nearest computer store and selecting a new one. I need to travel a couple of hours, and then my nearest town does not provide much of a variety to choose from. Other alternative is I have to drive another couple of hours to the nearest city, and that is very difficult at this point as we have one vehicle. There are no public transport around here, and my daughter's working, so she needs the car most of the time. Anyway, my other option would have been to order something online and have it delivered. However, being almost Christmas and with the various lockdowns in place, I was informed that it could take up to 14 days to have the laptop of my choice delivered. Luckily, a good friend, very kind, intelligent gentleman, managed to get my old one going again. It's not 100%, sound is still not up to scratch. It's extremely slow. The battery has completely gone, and fan not working properly, and it just has a lot of problems. However, it's going again, so at the very least I can narrate elsewhere, transfer it to the laptop, add it to the video, and there we go. So this is what I'm doing today. Hopefully within the next week or 2 weeks, I will have my problems sorted out with the electronics. Okay, that is not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm here to talk about today is the main news concerning the Sussexes, and in particular the piece that Meghan wrote for the New York Times. And before I do so, I just want to, let's call it my disclaimer. Whatever you may think of me after having listened to me, I would just like to tell you that regardless of my opinion of Meghan Markle, regardless of my opinion on this piece that she wrote, I do have the utmost empathy, sympathy. I honestly just feel for any woman who has experienced a miscarriage, be it early on in her pregnancy, be it later, be it a stillbirth. Yeah, I cannot imagine. I don't want to imagine the emotional turmoil. Having said that, my eldest daughter unfortunately had an angel baby. She lost her baby at approximately 3.5 months gestation. I remember what I felt like as her mother at the time. And what happened was I was actually there visiting. It would have been my last longer visit before they left for Canada. And she was fine when her husband and her dropped me off at the bus stop. She was fine. She was dandy. She was happy. When I arrived home, 8-9 hours later, I received a phone call, and it was a call to tell me that she was in hospital because she lost her baby. Now, I can remember how I felt, and I wasn't even there. I wasn't living in her skin, and regardless of my own disappointment, my own heartache, because we were so excited, that's basically all we spoke about for 2 weeks, and regardless of how I felt, I would not even try to pretend to know how she felt. My sister also had a miscarriage early on in one of her pregnancies, as had my stepdaughter. And although I wasn't anywhere near them at the time when it happened, having been so close to my daughter and knowing what I felt almost on her behalf, or the sympathy and empathy I felt for her, and then not even being the mommy that it happened to, I do have the deepest sympathy for anyone who has to go through that. Okay, so as long as most of you understand that, I am happy to proceed with my opinion on the article that Meghan wrote, titled The Losses We Share. Now, I know that many of the other YouTubers had read the article in full on their channels, and I do not wish to do so, but I do feel that in order for me to illustrate my feelings, I need to read the first part, because I am going to refer back to it. And it reads as follows. It was a July morning that began as ordinarily as any other day. Make breakfast, feed the dogs, take vitamins, find that missing sock, pick up the rogue crown that rolled under the table, throw my hair in a ponytail before getting my son from his crib. After changing his diaper, I felt a sharp cramp. I dropped to the floor with him in my arms, humming a lullaby to keep us both calm. The cheerful tune, a stark contrast to my sense that something was not right. I knew as I clutched my firstborn child that I was losing my second. Hours later, I lay in a hospital bed holding my husband's hand. I felt the clamminess of his palm and kissed his knuckles, wet from both our tears. Staring at the cold white walls, my eyes glazed over. I tried to imagine how we'd heal. Now I'm going to leave it there, because up until that paragraph, I felt empathy, I felt sorry for her, and let's just say I fell for her story. But, yes, here comes the but. She then continued talking about her comment in the African Journey video, where she thanked the journalist for asking her whether she was okay. And that is where she lost me. And I realized that regardless of whether she indeed experienced a miscarriage or not, that whatever happened to Meghan or did not happen, she was now using it as a publicity stunt. And at that point, even before I continued reading the rest of the piece, I was utterly disgusted. Now, I want to make it very clear that I am not against people talking through their pain, people finding help, speaking to others who had experienced the same thing. I'm all for it. I think it's healthy, and I think sometimes it is needed. And sometimes I think it's also necessary to speak to someone who is not a member of your family. Because often our families see us one way, or they know us too well, and they do not understand the complexities of us when we are suddenly placed in a very different scenario, where we have no experience of being in that particular situation, where we feel ourselves at a loss. And at such times, I think it is good and even sometimes necessary to either speak to a professional or to speak to someone who had been in the same situation. But that is not what Meghan is doing here, is it? No. She went and wrote this piece where she spent a couple of paragraphs talking about her experience, and the rest The rest is either making excuses for her previous bad behavior or becoming political. And therefore, I am one of the few, or maybe one of the many, who do not feel comfortable with this piece she wrote. And I am not sure whether I believe she had actually gone through a miscarriage herself. And I'm going to illustrate it for you a bit later on, but I just want to continue talking about what else she wrote. Okay, so she used this piece to explain herself once again, to explain the comment she made on that video. And then, as we know, she went on to discuss the COVID-19 scenario about people losing their elderly parents, a man who had died, who was actually well. She goes on to talk about Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. And at this point, I was wondering what this had to do with her own loss, had that loss been real. She also goes on to talk about driving in a taxi, seeing a woman cry in the street, etc., etc. And although I understand what she was trying to illustrate, she did not want to come across as looking like the only person who's ever suffered a loss, the only person who's ever had to experience pain, and she wanted to draw other people into her narrative. However, what was Meghan actually trying to do in this piece? Was she trying to garner sympathy for herself? Was she trying to put across her own pain due to the miscarriage? Was she trying to open a door to more conversation on miscarriages and stillbirths? What was she trying to do? I could not understand what she was getting at. However, when I finished reading the piece, what I walked away with was that Meghan was trying, firstly, to fix her own public profile, and then secondly, she was trying to now cover up all her previous errors and mistakes by using something like a miscarriage, because she knew, or at least her PR team knew, that in the light of something like a miscarriage, very few of us would actually dare criticize her or give a nasty comeback on this piece she wrote. So after I read the piece, instead of feeling empathy and sympathy for this woman, I walked away from it experiencing anger. I felt angry. I wanted to shake this woman, and I wanted to cry for my daughter. Although she experienced a miscarriage more than 2 years ago and she now has a healthy little girl, Meghan's piece brought it all back. And on behalf of my daughter and the many other women who had suffered similar losses, I felt like shaking Meghan Markle until her teeth rattled, because this was unnecessary. This was once again, in my opinion, her word salad, her trying to cover up for herself, and she dared to use something like a miscarriage, to put that in there in order to prevent us women and men, mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers, from criticizing her. And luckily, I did not have the electronics to make a video when I was angry and I had time to think about it. But even so, I still feel the same kind of anger every time I look at her words. So I decided to take my anger and to use it productively. And what I did was the very words that made the headlines. I went and Googled those words, and I'm reading them to you once again. I knew as I clutched my firstborn child that I was losing my second. So, as always, I went to Dr. Google, I entered those words, and I Googled them as words and not under the heading of Meghan Markle. And I came up with these words in a book. The book is called Chasing Light, Finding Hope Through the Loss of Miscarriage. And it was written by Stephanie Tong. And it's on Amazon. And from what I read in just the example they gave us, I think it may be a book one could recommend to anyone who had suffered a miscarriage or a stillbirth. From what I can gather, it's her personal account of going through a miscarriage, not just once, but a couple of times. And from the piece I read, it is well written and very real. Anyway, getting back to me Googling those specific words, I would like to read an extract from Stephanie Tong's book. I dragged myself to my room, sat on the edge of the bed and cried. There was no denying what was happening again. My vision was blurred from the tears, and that moment Malaya came to find me. Now Malaya's her 2-year-old. She crawled up in my lap and rested. Holding her towards my chest, I clutched her tightly and cried into her. As I tenderly held my firstborn in my arms, I was saying goodbye to my third. Okay, I'm going to repeat this. I clutched her tightly and cried into her. As I tenderly held my firstborn in my arms, I was saying goodbye to my third. Back to Meghan Markle's words. I knew as I clutched my firstborn child, I was losing my second. Now at this point, I lost it. People, I am sick of this woman. Utterly sick. And at this point, I do not believe that she had indeed suffered a miscarriage. And if she indeed did, I sincerely apologize. And I will give you all my word. The day she provides me with medical records and an affidavit by a doctor who is prepared to put his reputation on the line to go give a legal statement, that day I will believe that she indeed had a miscarriage. And that day I will publicly apologize. And I will apologize sincerely. And I will shed tears for what I just said. But at this point, I'm sorry, people, I do not believe her. I do not believe her. It is obvious that she wrote this piece to try and cover up, to make an excuse for everything she did wrong in the past. It is clear to me that she had gone and read up on miscarriages and possibly, like me, read this excerpt from Stephanie Tong's book and just gave it her own spin. So that is my opinion. And if I'm right, then I find Meghan Markle the vilest, most disgusting woman walking our planet. If I'm wrong, then I am deeply, deeply sorry. And then I do hope they find the opportunity to heal. And I do hope they have another healthy child, wherever he or she may come from. Okay. So that's me preaching my truth. On the other hand, when I try, and I'm not psychic, but when I try and look into the future, I have two things that I can come up with. Because for the life of me, and regardless of what I just said, I cannot believe that anyone could actually lie about something as horrific and as sad as a miscarriage. And therefore I even doubt my own words when I say what I say, because it's just beyond me to believe that anyone can do something like that. But I keep coming back to what this woman continues to do in her piece, and I just find it not to be truthful, not to be real. And why? Why would she do that? And the only things I can come up with is the following. It was a last-ditch effort from her to hang on to her husband, whom I believe and was told was very upset and very angry when the truth of her collaborating on her book, on the Finding Freedom book, came out, and a couple of the other lies that she had used to manipulate him with came out during this last piece of her court case. So I think this was sort of a last-ditch effort, not just to gain our sympathy, but also to gain his. That's one part of it. The other part of it is, I think, this may be an effort to preempt an open surrogacy birth in the future. That's a second option. But then again, I cannot for the life of me think like Meghan Markle. I have my own mental issues, but I certainly do not suffer from the same mental issues as she does, and therefore I cannot think like her. So these are two of the options I can come up with. Unfortunately, as much as I try and think and dig and research, I can't come up with anything else. It is just beyond me. So for now, that is my take on her story of her miscarriage in the New York Times. And I hope that I came across as being sincere and honest and just bringing you guys my opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. So for now, I'm going to say goodbye. I have a few other videos that I started preparing for before my laptop gave problems, and they all like half done and in various stages of completion. So what I'll be doing in the following week is I will try and complete most of them and put them up as I complete them. And then there's also one piece of very interesting discovery that I've made, which I will bring to you in the next day or two. I think this was a very emotional video, and I don't want to convolute the issue by bringing in other issues at this point. So I'm going to end this video. I'm going to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you for hanging in there and waiting for me. And I'll do my best for you over the next week or two to bring you some more material. Stay safe, and just know I love and appreciate all of you. See you next time. Bye.